So I kind of have a thing for vintage laptops. To me, they feel like a really intimate connection to the past. Very personal machines, and back then, very exclusive, at least compared to the much more communal family desktops. But using them today, tethered to a desk, is only half the experience. Because these machines, they were meant to be mobile. So what if you wanted to log into your favorite BBS or old school MMO in a 90s coffee shop from your PowerBook 165? Wirelessly. Well, I have a tiny little device that can let us live some of that 90s magic today and perhaps even push it a little further. And I think it can even let me fulfill a dream I talked about way back in my very first YouTube video. So stay tuned. This diminutive device is a Hayes-compatible modem emulator with an RS-232 serial connection, which can connect to your modern 802.11 BGN Wi-Fi network and bridge that connection straight into your vintage machine. Basically, it works with any computer with a serial port, which will see this as if it were an old-school serial dial-up modem. It was developed by the masterminds behind theoldnet.com, whose mission is basically to allow old machines to access stuff over the modern internet, which they've famously done through services like their Wikipedia proxy, browser proxy, and more. But this magical little device is pretty much the ultimate expression of that mission, getting old machines online in a really rather functional and authentic way. Now, there are similar devices out there, but they tend to cost a bit more, and especially with shipping to North America, can be a little bit hard to get. But this little guy, this is about the most fun you can have for 30 bucks. Looking closer at the device, we can see how the magic happens. On top here is a development board, at the heart of which is an ESP8266, which is a low-cost and reliable Wi-Fi system on a chip with a full TCP stack and microcontroller that's used in a lot of IoT and enthusiast projects. And that's running custom firmware that imitates a Hayes-compatible modem, which was the predominant standard for dial-up modems throughout the 80s and 90s. And beneath that is a custom board that funnels the connection into this RS-232 serial jack, which, just like the old Hayes modems, makes this compatible with an enormous number of computers from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In my version 2 unit, this breadboard is actually hand soldered and filed down by TheOldNet themselves, though version 3 has a very nice custom printed PCB there instead, but functionality wise, they're identical. And these two buttons are used to reset the device, marked RST, and to change the baud rate back to 300, in case you forget what you set it to, which is the button marked flash. And we'll see why that's important when we start playing around with this. But first, we need to solve a bit of a problem. You see, this RS-232 serial jack is compatible out of the box with a ton of different computers, but not old Macs. You see, Macintoshes of the time used a more modern standard, actually, RS-422, which fortunately can be configured to work with RS-232, but unfortunately, it's a completely different connector. Now, I do have this official Apple adapter, which goes from the mini DIN to your RS-232 standard serial connector, but for whatever reason, this does not work with the modem, even when I have a gender changer on the end there and connect it, it just does not read anything from this modem here. And I have no idea why, so I had to go to Plan B and build my own adapter, which I have right here. Fortunately, I found a guide on MacGUI.com which included pinouts and all the wiring to build such a thing, and while you can buy DE9 breakout connectors that make it very easy, I decided to go the Action Retro route and cut up two cables, an Apple serial cable and just a regular serial cable here, and spliced them together on my holding hands here, and I just twisted the cables together to test it, and it does work. So basically what I did was I just used my multimeter to beep out each pin on each connector to make sure which wire it went to, and then followed that guide, which I'll link below, to connect all the right wires together. So let's try this out on a Mac and see if it works with our modem. Okay, and I did test this on my 486 laptop with a regular serial port just to make sure it did in fact work, and it does. So now let's test this on our beautiful PowerBook 1400C 166, which is maxed out with 64 megs of RAM. Now, of course, this machine is perfectly capable of doing the internet all on its own without a fancy modem emulator, but this beautiful active matrix screen will let us see, what's going on. So we're going to be using ZTerm, which back in the day was one of the best terminal emulators, which is the predominant way that you would talk to your modem back in the day and also connect to different services. So we just need to set this to 9600 baud because that's what I set the modem to on my 486, and change it to hardware flow control X on X off. And we'll type in AT for attention. And no response. Let's see. We'll just reset the modem. And it just blinked blue. Let's try this again. Okay, so still nothing. Before I tear these wires apart, I did make sure that none of them are touching and shorting each other. I'm going to hold the flash button on here until it blinks blue quickly. And that means it reset the baud back to 300. Oh, now I'm getting something. So maybe I had the baud set weird. Let's change this to 300 baud. Yeah, you know what? I think actually the problem is ZTerm. Yeah, so I'm using the PowerPC beta of ZTerm and it is now frozen. So let me grab the version of ZTerm that I know works right, which is version 1.0.1, which is actually the 68K version, but I'm going to grab that and yeah, this is hard locked. So we will restart this and be right back. Unfortunately, this is super easy to get files onto because I put a CF card in there and you don't even need any tools to get in. Everything just kind of snaps apart and you can pull out CF card, which I can then put into a USB adapter into my favorite bridge machine, my 12-inch aluminum PowerBook G4. We'll just drag over ZTerm 1.01. Okay, so here we are in ZTerm 1.0.1, and let me reset the modem. And then make sure that's at 300. Hey, there it is. I guess it wasn't fully set to 300 for some reason, but now it is. And it is connected to Wi-Fi, although it's being a little strange. Let me try another USB power cable. Okay, so I'm glad my first reaction wasn't to tear all the wires apart because it turns out the problem was actually a sketchy power cable into the modem, which does require 5 volts from micro USB, but now the modem works fine. If you type AT for attention, we get OK. If I type in AT question mark, we can see the stats of the modem and some helpful information about different commands. So if we do AT &V, we can see that we're connected to my temporary Wi-Fi network here, Action Wi-Fi. But yeah, now that we know this works, I'm going to solder this cable together because that rat's nest is a little much even for me. So let's do a fast forward soldering montage and then we'll try this out on a bunch of different computers and see what it can do. All right, well, it's not the best looking cable ever, but we're going for function over form here. So to test it, I've brought out a somewhat older machine. This is a PowerBook 540C from 1994, a 33 megahertz 68 LC040 PowerBook with 40 megs of RAM. So definitely a machine that has a bit more trouble connecting to the internet. And I've already got everything configured, and as we'll see, I have wired everything correctly. So we are connected to my temporary Wi-Fi, Action Retro Wi-Fi network, And yeah, it's alive. So AT question mark, as we saw, brings up a list of all of the different options that we have. So everything starts with AT, which is attention, which is the Hayes compatible command set. And back in the day, if you wanted to call a BBS, you would type to your modem ATDT and then the telephone number, and it would call the BBS. Now, that was before my time, so I've never dialed into a BBS like that, and there's not many BBSs today that you can actually dial into over a telephone line. So what this modem emulator does is allow you to dial into an actual URL, and it'll pipe the content from that server through the modem emulator into your terminal. So for example, if I do ATDT BBS.5, I don't know why delete doesn't work. Nope. ATDT bbs.foztext.com. There we go. We can dial into the level 29 BBS, which is the first BBS everybody tries when they get an old machine connected to the internet. And this BBS is actually run by the people behind the Retro Battle Stations subreddit and retrobattlestations.com. And it's a homemade, homebrew BBS that actually has a lot of people logging in and posting on it, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I've logged out of the Fostex BBS. If we go back into our help listing, we can see that there's a cool feature in here called Speed Dial. So if we do AT&V, we can see what is in the speed dial listings. So we've got the oldnet.com's own BBS, which I think is down right now, and then a couple other cool BBSs. And now to connect to one of the speed dials, I just type in ATDS and then a number. So we'll connect to number 2. And it's dialing the BBS. We get our cool fancy color graphics with this nice color display. And did I register here? I think so. Yeah, there we go. Oh, apparently I have mail in here. And there's our nice ASCII dragon for Empire of the Dragon. And so BBSs are fun, but what I'm really excited about to do with this modem, and actually the whole reason I bought it, I like to play games online that are kind of the original MMO. So way before World of Warcraft and EverQuest, MUDs were text-based multiplayer RPGs with many of the elements that still live in modern MMOs, like leveling, mobs, areas, teaming up in groups to kill things, tanking, healing, etc. And I was first introduced to MUDs in middle school, way back in the 90s, and my friends and I were absolutely obsessed by one called Asphyria. Now, virtually all MUDs were run by hobbyists, often using their own machine in their house as a server, and they were built on freely released code bases like CircleMUD, which was my favorite. And unfortunately, Asphyria is long since gone, being a hobbyist thing run on probably a Pentium in the 90s, but there are a few that exist that I still hop into and play from time to time, and mudconnector.com is a great resource to find and jump on and play these games, which require basically a potato could run it, because as long as you can run a terminal, you can connect. So let's try to connect to one that I've been playing right now using our Hayes compatible Wi-Fi modem. And so I'm going to do dw.kixass.org and then colon for the port, so colon 1111. That's going to dial up the Deathwish MUD, which is probably my favorite one right now because it just reminds me so much of the one that I used to play. This might not be the most technically advanced one, but just like the old days, this is run by one person out of her house on a computer in her closet, and it's been live on the internet since 1994. So let me log in with my character here. Yep, there we go. I'm in, and then let me turn on local echo because otherwise I can't see what I'm typing. And here we are. So logged into this MUD on this computer from 1994, which, man, that brings back so many memories. I mean, the first time I played a game like this, it was in middle school on a no-name Windows 3.1 machine that had Telnet running on it. So let's see, who is online? We actually have 6 people. So I'm Hork, the dork here, and then there's 5 other people on, and they're all very high-level people. And yeah, I still play this game quite a bit. As you can see, I'm actually level 44 on this character, not too far from the max level of 50. And I have a couple other characters on here, alts as they're called. Okay, so a PowerBook 540C from 1994, that's pretty cool, but let's see if we can go a bit older. This is my PowerBook 165, a wonderful little machine from 1993 with a 68030 processor, a whopping 4 megs of RAM running System 7.1. Definitely a computer that would have some trouble connecting to the modern internet. Mine is let down a bit by this passive matrix display, which is in a bit of a need of a recap, meaning every so often you have to kind of dial it in to get a good solid picture, but the passive matrix displays they used were pretty sharp and pretty easy to read, so I kind of like this 4-bit grayscale look. Okay, and I've launched ZTerm and fiddled with the contrast a bit. And yeah, looks like we're connected. Yep, 9600 baud. And this screen, I have to say, for passive matrix display, is pretty good. So let's try to connect to our MUD again and see what that looks like. ATDT to connect. Yeah, totally playable on here, and typing on this keyboard here is quite a dream. Yeah, you forget how good these keyboards used to be. It's pretty cool playing this MUD on this 1993 computer, but let's exit out of this and see if we can go even older. Okay, so I know that I always say that every computer I work on is my favorite, but this is my favorite. This machine started off life in 1984 as an early production run Macintosh 128K, the original Mac, and sometime later in its life was upgraded by the Apple official upgrade path to a Mac Plus, which replaced the motherboard and the back casing to fit all the ports on the new motherboard. And then I upgraded this to 4 megs of RAM when I bought it from a guy on Craigslist. It was actually broken, but it was just one solder joint on the analog board that I had to touch up to fix it. And it's in beautiful condition. I haven't done any restoration to the case, although you know my reputation for case restoration. But it has the original keyboard in excellent condition. The original mouse still works beautifully. And I have it running System 608 right now, booted off of my floppy EMU. And it can run up to 7.5, which I do have a drive on the EMU with 7.5 on it, which it's a lot of fun to run that system, but System 6 on this absolutely ancient 68000 running at 8 megahertz. Well, this machine has never even heard of the internet, let alone connecting to Wi-Fi, and this modem emulator, this is going to let me fulfill a dream that I talked about when I showed off this computer in my very first ever YouTube video. And that dream was to get this online and to actually play a MUD on it. And guess what we're going to do right now? So here is our ZTerm. And I really hope this doesn't run so slow that it's unusable. My dream has come true. Let's enter the Deathwish MUD, and it's a little bit slow, but I think perfectly reasonable. So I am in the Temple of Asgard now, so why don't we go try to find something to kill? Okay, so a funny area in this mud is Acme Acres, which is based off of the 90s cartoon show Tiny Toon Adventures, and a lot of these muds, again, run by hobbyists, had a lot of very funny zones. You know, they didn't really take themselves that seriously, and the Death Wish mud is no exception. So right above Asgard, we have Acme Acres, and we can go in here and find something nice and easy to kill. Oh, look, I'm now sober. I guess my barrel of beer wore off. Do a scan to see if anybody's around here. So we've got some students up north. All right, so K student. And yeah, that's not a very strong creature. Let's see if there's something stronger that I can murder in here. Oh look, here's Taz. Let's see, can we kill Taz? So consider Taz. Alright, I'm gonna try to kill Taz. He knocked me down. See, this is the thing with muds, is you have to really watch what's going on, and actually Taz might kill me. So let me get out of there because I wasn't really paying attention. Yeah, it's perfectly playable. The screen updates a little slower than I'd like, but honestly, you know, that was more than enough for me to see the Taz was going to kill me, and then I was able to flee, because you really have to pay attention to everything that's happening in the text here. Okay, so I think there is still one slight missing piece of the puzzle here, which I mentioned back at the beginning of the video. Old laptops were meant to be mobile, so what if I wanted to go out to a coffee shop or out in the middle of a field and use the internet there? And this thing is kind of tethered to the wall with this micro USB power adapter, and old laptops generally don't have USB, but I have an idea. And in fact, I've already implemented that idea, because this whole time I've been running this off of my modern smartphone. So I've got it plugged into the USB-C port here, and this is my Galaxy Note 10. And not only has this been powering the Wi-Fi modem, but this has also been running the hotspot that's been connecting us to the internet. So this whole time, everything we've been doing, we could literally do out in a field in the middle of nowhere. Well, as long as I have a battery in here that works. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And to make it even more portable, since I wouldn't want to walk into a Starbucks with all of this stuff set up just blinking away, that might look a little suspicious. The OldNet actually provides an option to get this little 3D printed case, which is actually quite nice. And there we go, that's what it looks like inside its nice little case, which is clear so you can see the lights blink-blonking away inside as you do stuff. And it does have pass-throughs for the buttons here. As you can see, the light shines through quite nicely. And that looks a lot more respectable to bring into a Starbucks. Just get a quick zip tie here. And just tidy that up a bit, and here we go. There's our dedicated cellular modem for vintage computers. And I don't know what else you'd need this stuff for. You know, I don't use my cell phone for anything else. So there we go. That is the OldNet serial Wi-Fi adapter. A pretty amazing little device, especially at this price point, by people who have already done a ton of cool stuff for the retro computing community. And this little guy can get pretty much any vintage computer connected to vintage internet services, even old Macs with a little bit of effort or the right adapter. And paired with a cell phone, and yeah, the zip ties, that's just a little funny, but seriously, paired with a cell phone and a hotspot and powered off the cell phone, that's pretty amazing. This whole little thing right here is all you need to get these old computers connected to the internet from literally anywhere. So let me know what you think about this little device in the comments below. How do you get your old computers online, and have you ever tried to do so before? because it's a lot of fun. But if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more Macintosh shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Spike, Connor, Justin, Greg from Rutk Mods, Chris, and Sorta Eclectic, and all of my Patreon supporters for helping make these shenanigans possible.